Good morning, Lakeview. I think most of us in the room are getting set down. Welcome to everybody who's watching on the streaming. We're in our last class in the series on 1 Corinthians. Going to wrap up the last verses of chapter 15 and go through chapter 16 today. So think of this as the completion of a letter that has multiple purposes. They have sent a letter to Paul earlier, and we're going to see where he answers two of the questions in that letter during these verses here this morning. They have also brought him word orally in person with three of the key members in the Corinthian church. They've made the travel from Corinth to where Paul is at. Paul is in the city of Ephesus. And if you look on the map, that's not a real far travel as far as the crow flies. It's maybe a couple hundred miles, but it's all water. It's straight from Corinth to Ephesus is right across the diameter of the Aegean Sea there. And Paul wants to travel by going around, but the brothers probably took a boat. That tells us a little bit. Boat rides were not trivially cheap. You had to have money to do that. And they were not trivially dangerous. In fact, this is going on, we might guess probably the winter time, because he talks about staying in Ephesus until Pentecost. Pentecost is like June, this time of year. Well, yeah, it's May, June, late spring. Last week was Pentecost this year. Yeah, thank you. So if he was going to wait there until Pentecost, then it's probably winter when he's writing this. And winter is not a time to cross the Aegean Sea. That is really stormy. It was so dangerous that even though Rome depended on that travel for shipping, their food came from Egypt. And that meant they had to cross that chunk of the Mediterranean. The Roman government themselves undertook to pay the insurance for the shipping because insurance was prohibitively expensive because so many ships sank in those storms in the winter. That gives us a context for these guys and what they're willing to undergo to get to Paul to ask these questions. That's the setting that this letter is wrapping up. 1 Corinthians 15:50, the resurrection of the Messiah and us. We're going to start with the last verses we saw last time. He's been talking about the importance of the resurrection and how some of them didn't believe in a resurrection, or they at least had speakers around that said they don't believe in the resurrection. He says, no. This is vital Christian doctrine. The current body that you are living in right now is planted in decay. It is raised to not decay again. This is vital, central Christian doctrine. It's the one thing that the Romans really couldn't put up with. They didn't mind the ideas of us being disembodied spirits after we die, but raising the body, that just flew in the face of their common sense. It is raised to not decay again. It is planted in something that has no water. It's dead. It is raised in splendor, planted in sickliness, raised in power. It is planted in a body that is characterized by its soul, feelings, emotions, psychology. We're controlled by that in this life, largely, terribly influenced at least. But it is raised in a body that is characterized by its spirit. That is not just emotions. It's the intentionality. If there is a body characterized by the soul, there is also one characterized by the spirit. It is written this way, and he justifies his separation there, soul versus spirit, on the basis of Scripture. The first man, Adam, became a living soul. That's a quote from Genesis 2. Then he says, the last Adam, referring to Jesus, became a life-making spirit. The person characterized by the Spirit did not come first. That was the person characterized by the soul. Then came the one characterized by the Spirit. The first man, Adam, out of the dust of the earth, the dirt. In fact, Adam's name is the Hebrew word for dirt. You ever thought about that? Every time Eve talked to him, she called him dirt. The second man out of heaven. Jesus came out of heaven, not out of dirt. So he says, like the man of dust are the dustlings, the children of dirt. Like the man of heaven are the heavenlings, the children of heaven. That is what we are, being made. And just as we bore the image of the dirt man, so also we'll bear the image of the heaven man. But I tell you, brothers, that, okay, see the contrast here. We will bear the image of the heaven man. But flesh and blood is not able to inherit a kingdom of God. Well, if we're going to bear that image, but flesh and blood cannot inherit it, then it stands to logic we're going to have to change. We're going to have to be more than what this flesh and blood is. Nor do things that rot now inherit things that never rot. Does this make any sense? Yeah? It's just common sense. Things that rot are not going to inherit things that can't rot. Look, I am telling you something that was not known before by the general public. That's his word is translated in some English translations as telling you a mystery. Well, the English word mystery doesn't have a time element in it, but the Greek word that sounds like that, mysterion, conveys the idea of something that was not known before, generally, but there are a few who know it. That's a mysterion. I'm telling you in. I'm letting you in on a secret or on something that's not very widely known. He expresses it somewhat poetically. Like we said, Paul's writing a lot of this in the parallelism of a Jewish rabbi thinking like the Hebrew language thinks. So he's writing poetically. Not everyone will die, but everyone will be altered. In an indivisible flash of time, will be changed. The Greek word there is atomi. It's the same word from which we get atom in English. In an atom of time, it's an indivisible unit of time. Suddenly, in this flash, in the blink of an eye, it says literally, in the last trumpet. Now that says something to us. I've got some words on the notes over there on the right. If there's a last trumpet, there have to be more than one trumpet, right? You wouldn't say last if there was only one. Matthew's gospel only had spoken of one trumpet. Matthew was probably written before this. He only spoke of one trumpet in chapter 24. Paul's letter to the Thessalonians, which is also probably before this, had only spoken of one trumpet. So what were the other trumpets? Where do we get more than one trumpet so that one of them could be the last trumpet? Well, there is a place in the Bible. It hasn't been written yet at the time of 1 Corinthians. It's going to come later, where there's 7 trumpets. But maybe more important than that, trumpets were war signals. They could be blown to call people to a feast, but if it was to signal the end of the war. So the last trumpet would say, there's no more war. It's time for the feast. That's what's so exciting about this. In that last trumpet, when war is done, there's no more war. There's no more callous destruction of innocent lives. It's time for the feast. And we will be dressed in the wedding clothes of righteousness, as the gospel sometimes put it. Oh yeah. And this is sudden. It's like, count on it, guys, you're going to be going through life, and then I'm dressed for a wedding. For it will trumpet, the last one will trumpet, and the dead will be raised up in bodies that will never decay. That's so exciting to Paul. Now, Paul maybe appreciated that more than a lot of us, because he was in bad shape by this point physically. Beaten, stoned, drug out of town for dead. Probably his ribs were broken in multiple places, and he was having a hard time breathing. He was ready for a body that didn't decay. Bodies that will never decay. And we, thinking of himself as one of those that will be around after, he's thinking he'll still be alive when the last trumpet comes. He'll change his tone, the tense of his verbs in 2 Corinthians. But right now he's thinking, it could be any time now. I'm alive now, so I expect to be alive then. We will be altered. For things that rot should not be protected by a covering that does not rot. You're going to put on clothes that are incorruptible, I think the Standard English translations say. And that kind of makes sense. You don't use like gold gilding on a piece of rotting fruit. You wouldn't do that. Why? So things that rot should not be protected by a covering that does not rot. This thing that dies, and he uses the word this, talking about his own body, this thing that dies should put on deathlessness. We should be ready for a body that does not die. So when this thing that rots dresses itself, that's the passive, or the middle voice of the verb, with this thing that rots, dresses itself in something that does not rot, and this thing that will die dresses itself in something that will not die. Notice the parallelism. He says it twice. That's the way Hebrew poetry goes. Then the word that was written will become reality. And he quotes Isaiah 25. Death has been swallowed into victory. He's looking for the fulfillment of Isaiah 25. That tells those of us who might have had thinking that the Old Testament was done, I don't have to think about that anymore. No, think about it. He's looking for the fulfillment of Isaiah 25. Death has been swallowed into victory. Then he adds another quote, this one from Hosea. Where's your conquest now, death? Where's your weapon now? Oh yeah, you can kill me, and I'll come back. What you got on me now, death? Hosea is really making it stick. And Paul says, this is what I'm talking about. The fulfillment of Hosea 13. Okay, now he's going to foreshadow something that he's going to talk about a year and a half later in his letter to Romans. Our Bible doesn't put them in that sequence, got it, but when you trace through all the references and the timeline of the book of Acts, Romans is in AD 57, this is AD 55 when 1 Corinthians is written. So he hasn't written Romans yet, but he will, and he's going to expand a great deal on this assertion in chapter 15, verse 56. Death uses sin as its weapon of suffering. It is sin that makes death so intensely destroying of what we value. If we didn't have any sin, okay, why would we care if the body stops working? Death uses sin as its weapon to cause suffering. But the power of sin, what is the power of this weapon? It's the law. Now, Paul's going to spend a lot of time on that with the Romans. They need to know that because Rome is the capital of the universe as far as they're concerned. It's by far the biggest city in the empire, by far the most powerful, richest, wealthiest, have the most historical artifacts, anything that you want, both good and vile, all flows into Rome. And that includes all kinds of people that care a great deal about making laws and changing laws, lawyers and lobbyists, we would call them today. Rome is filled with people that are placing a high priority on the laws. So when Paul writes to Rome, he's going to tell them that law stuff, that's just the power in the weapon of death. Ooh, that says something to those of us who live in a society that treasures rule of law, right? The power of sin is the law. Now, he doesn't expand on that anymore here, but he's kind of set up a signal flare of where this is going to go. Then he bursts out in praise in verse 57. Thank God in the relationship he gives us. That grace relationship. Remember, grace is not a get out of jail free card. Just go do whatever you want. It's not codependence. Grace is not codependence. Grace is a relationship where we are honored and rewarded for doing the best we can instead of meeting some objective standard we couldn't meet. Grace is a relationship. It's the translation of the Hebrew word chen, a relationship between a lesser and a greater, where the greater rewards the lesser for doing the best they can, even if it's not very good, and where the greater does not reward the lesser if they're not doing the best they can. Even if sloughing off, it's really good compared to other people. Okay, that's what grace is where the standard of evaluation is the attitude that we're trying to really express love to the greater. Thank God in this relationship. He's the one giving us the victory through our Master Jesus, the Messiah. For that reason, and he has this phrase, I've put hyphens in there, it's 2 words in Greek. Adelphoi, brothers, agapitoi, brothers in agape love. It's like one phrase that in English we need 4 words to get that phrase. My brothers in agape love. That's the essential element of Christianity, is this agape love, intentionally working to other people's good, whether they have earned that or not. My brothers in this agape love, make yourselves, it could be middle voice like that, make yourselves, or it could be passive voice, let yourselves be made solid, unshakable, always overflowing in the work of the Lord. I like both of those. Make yourself and let him make you. I think both of those work together. He's probably doing the, infinity %, but he wants me to do whatever I can. Both of us together, making ourselves solid, unshakable, always overflowing in the work of the Lord. Seeing that in the Lord, your work is not useless. And that's, I didn't get that high enough. You can kind of see the words there in the bottom on the wood. Sorry about that. The work in hardship. I put hyphens in there. It's not just work. It's work in hardship. The Greek word kapos carries that idea of, this isn't just work. This is work that really hurts, but we're doing it for one we love, and we're doing it together with others who love him. Your work in this, in the Lord, your work in hardship is not empty of results. It's going to pay off. There will be joy as a result of what work you have done in this hardship. And with that, he transitions to chapter 16, what we call chapter 16 now. So he wanted to close that resurrection chapter. It will be worth it. That's his closing thought on the resurrection. It will be worth it. Now he goes to this phrase that in English Bibles is usually now concerning, or something, words like that. In Greek, it's peride. It means, okay, you wrote me something, or you sent the brothers with this message, this question. Here's the question, and here's my answer to it. Now concerning. Your questions regarding the collection of money for the people of God. Yeah, he's talked to them about that. This is a big deal. You folks, it's plural, should do things the same way I arranged with the churches in the state of Galatia. Galatia is another state in the Roman Empire. They happen to live in the state of Achaia. Okay, Christians in 2 different states. You guys in Achaia do what I arranged for the churches in the state of Galatia to do. According to day 1 of a week, the implication is every week, each of you is to put away by himself, treasuring, I think English Bibles have saving up, but this is thesaro is the Greek verb. It's almost always not just putting it away, but treasuring what you put away. Treasuring whatever you put away, whatever is put away, in order that when I come, Paul writes, no special collections will be generated. We're not going to have to go out and have a bake sale or any of that stuff, or it'll already exist. It'll be ready because you've put aside a little bit every week. And then when I get there in a few months, it'll all be ready. That idea that what was being put aside was something important to be treasured was something I overlooked from just reading it in English, that we were to store it up. It didn't say treasure. But reading it in Greek, that reminded me at least of when King David had something to say on this subject too. He was wanting to have a big sacrifice to the Lord. Well, one of his loyal followers there, fairly near the city of Jerusalem, said, "Here, take all my stuff. You can have all these cattle and you can burn all my wood and make a big..." And David says, "I will not sacrifice that which costs me nothing. Tell me what the price is and I'll pay it all." In fact, I'll go a little high side. He wants his gift to mean something to him. And that's kind of that picture that we saw in terms of the meaning of the word grace. Grace is where the justice is focused on the attitude of the giver. Are you really trying? He says, I want my sacrifice to be something that costs me something. So I know I value my God that I'm sacrificing to. And he knows it. And the other people around me know it. And soberly, so do the other supernatural beings. European languages like English for the last 300 years have kind of downplayed that, but in the first century, the world was full of other supernatural beings, many of whom were not friendly. Some of whom were. Paul is wanting the money that we put aside each week to be a message to those angels, good and bad, that we actually treasure God. Because they're watching and they're seeing what we put in. And the good ones are cheering for when our attitudes are right, and the bad ones are cheering when our attitudes are not right. And Paul's very conscious of this, that whatever we do, that gives the angels, the supernatural beings, in Hebrew they're called B'nai Elohim, it gives them a chance to do things that they wouldn't otherwise have been authorized to do if we had done something different. So this, what you put in the contribution, what you save up by yourself for a special, whatever it is, when you put it aside, say that's the Lord's, that affects the people, God, yourself, and the rest of the supernatural beings watching us. They are affected by what we put aside and the attitude with which we put it aside. So according to day 1 of the week, each of you is to put away beside himself, treasuring whatever he has put away, in order that when I come, no special collections will be generated. And I made a note on the side that Paul does not tell them how much. In the Old Testament, there was a minimum 10% thing, right? Paul says, we're not doing minimums here. You're going to decide how much you can give, still meet your other responsibilities, and that will be the measure of your reward. Paul continues, when I hope to arrive, whoever you approve, I will send through, meaning through to Jerusalem where these gifts are going. Through these deliverables to carry your thankful grace relationship into Jerusalem. Okay, so this grace relationship between the Corinthian Christians and God also affects their relationship with other people. That energy from God flows through them to other people, and it's a grace relationship to those other people. He's sending it to Jerusalem. Well, this was interesting to read up on this. The commentaries were quick to note that sounds like there was famine, there was hardship. People were starving. Well, there had been a famine in the days of Claudius Caesar. His career as Caesar finished in AD 54, so it's been a couple of years, right? So it's more than famine. Many of these Jewish Christians in Jerusalem had been cut off by their families for becoming Christians. That's an economic hardship because your money generally came in the family business. That's serious. Okay, that's another source of poverty, and it's real. But there's a couple other things going on here. Were there poor people in Corinth? Sure. Everywhere else in the Roman Empire? Sure. 60% of the people in the Roman Empire were slaves. Lots of poverty around. Why Jerusalem? Paul had promised to the other apostles when they commissioned him 15 years earlier, whatever it was, to go to the Gentiles. They said, remember these things. They gave him a list of 4, one of which was remember the poor. And since the apostles saying that were in Jerusalem, front stage is the poor in Jerusalem. Paul's making good on his promise to the other apostles. Second, he's also calling the church to see Jerusalem as central to their faith. They're worshiping the God of Israel, whose name is in Jerusalem. That's an important part of this to Paul also. Third, and this one I've got up here, Paul is saying, I want to strengthen the unity between the Gentile and Jewish portions of the church. He knew the forces that were at work then, and that in the next century would have Jews attacking Christians across the entire empire. And a couple centuries later would have the Christians attacking the Jews across the entire empire. These forces were already visible in people's hearts. And he's wanting to do something to heal that anti-Semitic rift, to strengthen their bonds to each other. And he also wants the Gentile Christians to do something tangible to thank Israel for the blessings that God has given to the Gentiles through Israel. A tangible thanks. So all of this makes the gift to the poor in Jerusalem more important than it would have been just to give the money to poor people in Corinth. There's an importance to this gift going to Jerusalem. And it says, I'm going to send it with this letter. It's translated letter, epistole, but it's clear from what he's saying that this was like a package that had money in it, and in addition to that, some words. So it was a gift that included words, epistole. Then he goes and says, on the other hand, if it seems worthwhile for me to travel also, then they, the people that the church has appointed, the church decided who was going to be going. Paul didn't decide that. But whoever the church decides to send, they will travel with me. I looked at that wording and said, my goodness, that's bold. If we had a visiting preacher come in here and he said, Okay, I want to take your gift to this other place over here, and Leanne, you're going to come with me, and we would say, wait, you're a guest. Why are you telling us what to do, right? Paul writes with the confidence that he has been appointed by God. So of course those people who are trying to follow God are going to follow Paul. There's an extreme confidence in this, the way he words it. They will travel with me, instead of saying, I would like to go with them. There's a difference in the confidence in this statement. He continues, but I will come towards you when I would have gone through the state of Macedonia, because I am definitely going through Macedonia. Makes a definite decision. But if I make it to you, I may stay some time, or even the whole winter, in order that you folks may help me on my way wherever I travel. The conditionality, if and may, those words don't translate in modern translations very well, but when you think about the uncertainties of travel, where a huge percentage of it, like 20, 30, 40% of the ships that tried to cross in the winter would sink. This is a very dangerous thing to do. So he writes in conditional language in Greek. For I do not want to see you during this trip now, because I hope to invest a longer time towards you folks, if the Lord may allow it. I will stay here in Ephesus until Pentecost. For a door has been opened fully for me. This is a perfect tense verb. Opened fully for me, large and effectively energized. And there are also many who are being set against me. We have a good chance for a lot of wins, and the battle is intense. So I'm going to stay here for a while. If Timothy comes, there's the conditionality of travel again. You folks look carefully. And Paul turns from the practicality to his fatherly care for Timothy, his son in the faith, he calls him later. You folks look carefully in order that he, Timothy, may become fearless towards you. Guide your words, your actions, your gestures, your timing, everything you do towards Timothy, do it intentionally to cultivate fearlessness in this young man. So he will be fearless towards you. Cultivate boldness by being willing to accept his leadership. Because he does the work of the Lord just like I do, Paul writes. For that reason, no one should look down on him. Do not look down on Timothy. Instead, you all help him along his travels in peace, in order that he may come towards me, because I am waiting for him with the brothers. And I put a footnote on the side there. That sort of protectiveness for young missionaries is good advice for the church today. We need to protect and cultivate boldness in young missionaries. We've got a lot of boldness in Tom Eckpott, who's one of our missionaries. Well, one of the younger ones. We should cultivate that. Now, about your questions regarding Apollos, the brother. This is another question they'd asked. Probably people wanted to hear him. They knew he was eloquent. Paul, get us in Apollos. He says, many times I coached him. This is words translated encourage. It's encourage like a coach encourages star athletes. It's not soft and cuddly. It's coaching. Encouraging in a, you got work to do. I coached him in order that he might go towards you with the brothers. And he absolutely did not want to come at this time. Apollos absolutely did not want to come right now. But he will come when there's a good opportunity. Now that's really interesting, because there was the mindset in Corinth was if you had an eloquent speaker and you had a not so eloquent speaker, a lot of people will follow this guy and ignore that guy. There's a setup for rivalry if you have two of them in Corinth. Probably that's what Apollos knew was going on and didn't want to be a part of it. Paul shows his integrity that even in that situation, he asks his potential rival to go there. That's humility on the part of the Apostle Paul. He writes with boldness, but also with humility at the same time. Interesting. And now, because he says he will come when there's a good opportunity, sounds like Paul has finally convinced Apollos, okay, you could be profitable to the Lord in Corinth. Now he starts his climax, his final words. You folks, be alert, stand. These are all imperatives. That's why there's the exclamation points. You be alert, stand and trust, be made like courageous men, become strong. All of you be created in agape love. That's an interesting expression, isn't it? In the present tense, be created, genesthai, in agape love. It wasn't complete in them yet. They are to be created in this. But I coach you, brothers. He said, I gotta help you. I gotta encourage you on this. Look at the household of Stephen. He's from the very start of our faith in the state of Achaia. He was one of the first, I think King James says, first fruits. He was one of the first converts in this Roman state of Achaia. He and his household set themselves to a plan to serve the saints. Look at them in order that you folks might work in harmony with the plans of people like them. With everyone who's working together and sharing loads. English Bibles translate this often with the word obey. Obey them, your leaders. That's not wrong, but it's a little bit of a different flavor, because obey sounds like free will has been compressed and stopped in some degree. That's not the idea. Hypotasso is to come under a planned arrangement and serve there. It's not demeaning. Engage yourself in the plan that Stephen and his household have put together. But I rejoice over the coming of Stephen and Fortunatus and Achaicus. And we don't know who those were. Speculation is they might have been members of his household, freed slaves, sons, cousins, somebody in the church, important. I rejoice over their coming because these men filled up your shortfall, for they gave my spirit rest. And they gave rest to the spirit of you folks also. Therefore, study men like this. The English Bible sometimes says, okay, I'm getting the signal. The English Bible sometimes says recognize. That's not just praise them, it's study them, learn from these men. Okay, the church gives greetings. He says, you guys greet each other. Here's my signature. He's been dictating all this all along, but in his own handwriting, he writes Paul. He talks about Prisca. If you have time to glance through the note there, Prisca is a name. She was from a family. If her last name had been Rockefeller or Gates or Musk, that's kind of what the name Prisca means. They were important people. And here she is being banished because her husband's a Jew. And now being honored in the most popular book in history. Okay. The last phrase is there. He's got this loving signature and final greetings. And he says, the grace of the Lord be with you all. But he also has some harsh, if anyone does not love, friendship love, is not a friend of Jesus, let him be anathema. So right clear to the end, he's saying, do good and recognize boundaries. You've got to love Jesus. My love to all of you in Christ Jesus. Amen.